Hi guys, so welcome to a new video. Have not recorded in a short while. Just been relaxing, been pretty busy with work to be honest. But right, let's just get into it, get it over and done with, and that is Cook Islands Trust Structuring. And in this video, we are going to be focusing on those offshore structures and the potential differences between how the trust is actually set up in terms of the controller of the trust. Is this going to be a trustee or is it going to be a private trust company, right? So again, this has been presented by myself, William Harvey Hodgson, at Forward Point Solutions, FPS Holdings Group Limited. You'll probably know me from Forward Point Solutions. And again, we specialize in high-tier offshore structuring for private clients, corporates, international wealth management firms, and families, XYZ, okay? So today's focus, obviously, is trust structuring in the Cook Islands with private trustee companies and professional trustees, looking at the differences between them, and multi-layering with the US, Nevis, and Cook Islands entities. That's what we typically see nowadays, really, anyway. So just thought I'd obviously make a video with some real life stuff. Again, I'm not one of these digital marketing gurus we see online. I just say it how it is, okay? So why the Cook Islands? World-leading asset protection, no recognition of foreign judgments, statute of limitations as short as 1 to 2 years, confidentiality, and again, ideal for high net worth individuals and legacy planning, okay? Again, it is the number one place for asset protection in the world, that is for sure. So the trust there is number one, number two for Nevis. I've always gone and said that. That is my personal opinion, not legal advice, personal opinion. It's very unique to the situation in terms of where the trust goes, but the Cook Islands is essentially number one for sure. So trust basics, okay? Trust is a legal relationship where the trustee holds the assets on behalf of the beneficiaries. Now the key roles of the actual trust, right, is the settler, the trustee, the protector. That's obviously optional. So the protector actually essentially watches over the trustee to protect in the trust's interests. The beneficiaries are essentially the settler or the client who's going to set up this, maybe his grandchildren, his wife, maybe his business partner, for example, or another LLC, people who benefit from the trust, okay? And the settler is whoever initiates the trust. So there's two options when you come up to actually setting up the Cook Islands entity in terms of the trust formation. Number one is you go through a PTC and you're essentially the member, the manager, the director and the shareholder of this PTC, and the PTC acts as the trustee. The issue with this option is it means that the client himself actually has a lot more control. Now this is bad in a legal point of view, essentially because if we're doing this for asset protection and we want to remove the control, the more control that you remove from the client connected to the assets and the wealth, the harder it is for challengers to challenge that client on a particular lawsuit in financial gain, right? That's what's important here. So, in my point of view, we would always set up the trust with a trustee to remove the control. Obviously, there's situations where those statements which I put into this kind of solution were that asset protection is key and it's just a client. Now, if this is basically where multiple owners are in a company and they want to manage a trust as a company, maybe for a custom pension system which they have or something like this, it's a different story, okay? But how we would typically just set up for a client is a trust in the Cook Islands or Nevis, both very good. Cook Islands obviously number one, Nevis number two. And I have a trustee for that. Now that's on my licensed trustee service, most likely in the local jurisdiction, which you're doing a trust. Even if you're doing a trust in Belize, we have some trustees in Belize which we use, and they're just great, very trustworthy people. So the professional trustee is probably the route to go down with this way of thinking, right? Of removing control. So that's the way that I would personally recommend to go down. But again, it's case by case. I need to hear the facts. I need to see the full actual story. Again, so a PTC, which is a private trust company, which acts as the trustee for the trust, if that makes sense. It goes client, PTC, trust, Nevis. As a professional trustee kind of structure is FPS Trustees Limited, let's say, it's going to be essentially something like that. It's not that company there, but it's something like that. Trust, Cook Islands, Nevis. There's nothing to do with the client, if that makes sense. So you can see why having the trustee is really key. So LLCs as the operating entities. The US acts as active trading companies or investment platforms. Nevis or Cook Islands LLC acts as a buffer holding vehicle, and ownership flows into the trust for optimal asset protection. You act as a manager of LLCs, and that's obviously day-to-day control. You do not own the LLCs personally; they are trust owned. So you do control those. So they're still open, but obviously the money flows to the trust where it's safe, if that kind of makes sense. Depends on how many layers you actually have within this financial strategy you're actually looking at setting up. So there's the legal kind of protocols in place, right? So there's quarterly financial updates depending on how it's kind of structured, right? It doesn't have to be there, but typically that is quite common. All major choices require trustee pre-approval. Again, this depends on how the trust deed is written. The trust deed, I'll probably make a separate video on, because if not, you could speak about trusts for 10 years because they're so complex. That's the issue, right? So finally, no beneficiary can benefit direct without documentation and trustee oversight, okay? Again, it's all to do with a trust deed. If using a PTC to actually compare, the logs must be all maintained. Internal trust decisions must follow legal separation from personal actions. Trustee cannot act for personal interests. Okay. Suggested kind of setup. You see the benefits here as well. So, as I've said before at the start of this video, you can add a protector. You can consider a letter of wishes to guide trustee actions. The use of multi-banking, so Caribbean plus Hong Kong, is probably a fantastic choice to go down. Now, I haven't spoken much about banking with trust, but I've probably spoken about it in a few other videos. If not, I'll look at making some, specifically have a 10-15 minute conversation to introduce you to some of the actual banks which I use with trust, essentially, and how to onboard with them. It's not the easiest thing to do, right? It's awkward, to say the least, in terms of compliance, looking at these trusts. So we have to, be very transparent with the bank in terms of compliance and just present it in a specific manner, which clearly shows, although there is no UBO because you don't own it, it clearly shows you're in the best interest of the trust, essentially. So the bank then knows that, right? But then essentially they can understand the flow of funds, where the money's coming from, and therefore open the account, as it's a legit business system going on. So that's how the banking side works, okay? Again, there's many different clauses, many different types of trust deeds. Trust deeds I can speak about for hours. That's really what maintains, that's the foundations of the actual trust itself, right? So that's what's very key here as well. But other than that, guys, I'm going to cut it there, because if not, I could speak for hours about Cook Islands trusts. Hope you're well. I'll try to get some Nevis content out there, some Cookard and some more trust stuff going on. I've had a lot of inquiries about that, the same as funds. Yes, we do Cayman funds, we do trusts, we do these. We do a lot, there's FPS Financial Group, which owns, I think, six or seven worldwide enterprises in fintech and corporate solutions. So typically I just put forward point solutions. However, that's because this company does essentially everything, corporate solutions and fintech, banking, etc. While then I have separate entities that do those services too, and obviously different teams around the world. So generally speaking, we know what we're actually doing with a lot of this fintech side of a business, in particular, in terms of those licenses, iGaming, banking, right? Can be super easy, or can completely kill your entire business. So, if you're onboarded and you get debanked and you can't process any payments, you can't make any money. So, you need to be with those banks who don't debank you, who don't block those payments. And obviously, that's what we also do. That's a large time and effort that we spend doing. So, over on that one, guys, I will pass you on to the next video, which I guess will be in about 2 to 3 days. I'll probably try to upload them and schedule them over like a 2 to 3 week period. Try to get 20 more videos out to see if we still get the same engagement as last time. That would be fantastic stuff.